So I think it was very necessary to change the leadership of the post office. And I think a new leader needs to come in who is absolutely dedicated to delivering that compensation and those payouts, and to saying to the executive management that the dreadful run of losses that the previous managers have given the taxpayers is totally unacceptable. They've now got an accumulated loss, would you believe, of £1,390 million. Wow. And it wasn't just a senior civil servant, there was also some suggestion that the supervisory independent body that the government set up to hold its shareholdings was also saying unhelpful things about resisting some of the claims of the sub-postmasters. Now, I know from what they said in Parliament and from my lobbying of the ministers that they are absolutely focused on getting this sorted out as quickly as possible, and think that a lot of sub-postmasters are owed a lot of money, both in terms of money falsely taken from them and in compensation, and they have repeatedly asked their officials and the post office to get on and do it. So I think it was very necessary to change the leadership of the post office. And I think a new leader needs to come in who is absolutely dedicated to delivering that compensation and those payouts, and to saying to the executive management that the dreadful run of losses that the previous managers have given the taxpayers is totally unacceptable. They've now got an accumulated loss, would you believe, of £1,390 million, wow, despite taking money that they weren't owed from the sub-postmasters at the same time. I mean, wow, it's been a dreadful performance. I don't know how these people ever qualified for a bonus on top of very big salaries.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Toby Perkins, what do you make of this? I spoke with Kevin Jones just at the top of my show. He said that he didn't think the post office was fit for purpose anymore until they sort this out. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think there's two sort of key issues here. The first is that this allegation that's been made about there being a sort of a political decision to continue the injustice against sub-postmasters by sort of deliberately delaying the payments, and that needs an urgent investigation. We need to find out who it is that it is claimed said this, and we need to hear from them as to whether they accept it's true, and if so, why it was being said. And the allegation was very clearly that it was sort of political reasons to make the government's sort of finances look better. We need to get to the bottom of that really serious allegation. And I think Johnny Reynolds, the Labour Shadow Business Secretary, will be looking to pursue this urgently in Parliament tomorrow. And then more broadly, in terms of the performance of the post office, we do absolutely need to see, what it is that they are, who it is that is currently keeping this delay ongoing, and what the reasons are for it. To what extent is it political? To what extent is it administrative? To what extent is it incompetence? But the confidence in the post office are hugely important. A much loved institution in our country for hundreds of years, is being badly tarnished, totally mismanaged, and it needs to be addressed urgently.
Ronnie, do you agree with all of that? I mean, for the victims of this scandal, I mean, they must see this and just have even more fury on existing fury, right? I mean, it is horrific.
It's an allegation which has been refuted, but what it is an indication of the incredibly poor working relationship between the UK government and the post office. And as you say, we've run up against a situation which the UK government was part of in the Horizon scandal. There was backroom chat going on then about what should happen, who should be listened to, what could be hidden under the carpet at the time. And this is just another part of that. And as you say, at the heart of that, we've got sub-postmasters and mistresses who we now know were wrongfully convicted. Some went to prison, others lost their livelihood, some lost their life over this. Yeah. And all they're saying is now that everybody understands our situation. One, we need our convictions quashed, and two, we need paid compensation. And if the government in any way, shape or form has slowed that process down, then that has to be held account for that. What we should be focusing on here is trying to bring an end to this sorry affair and making sure that justice is received by the sub-postmasters and mistresses, and anything else, all the shenanigans, all the he said, she said, is superficial. It's secondary to this. We have to understand is the government delaying this process? And if they are, then absolutely shame on them.
Sienna, what do you think the political fallout is going to be for the government for this week in Parliament? As you heard there from Toby Perkins, Johnny Reynolds will bring this up. I'm sure many other MPs across the House will want to raise this in Parliament. I mean, it's not a good look, is it?
It's such an extremely damaging allegation, because obviously so many people watched that drama, were in tears watching it. We all were. And it kind of was really deeply felt across the country, everyone who watched that. And it's a kind of combination of that very sensitive topic plus this allegation saying that basically politicians are putting electoral politics before justice. And that is the kind of thing that, of course, Labour and individual MPs who have been campaigners on this issue for many years will be bringing this up in Parliament. I think we can be certain about this. I think that the kind of interesting thing also in this story is the allegation was about a senior civil servant relaying this message. And of course, we know that civil servants were advising ministers at the time not to meet with Alan Bates and other campaigners. So I think there are questions around that as well, the kind of role that they're playing in this scandal, an ongoing role, possibly, according to this allegation.
It's worth noting that the government...
The story very clearly didn't say that a minister had said this, and the ministers have been crystal clear, and they put it into the terms of reference of the senior people at the post office, that sorting out the compensation and the money owed to these sub-postmasters was a crucial first thing they had to do. I don't think there's any doubt that ministers want this solved. Of course they want it solved. They understand the awful emotions that have been unleashed by this and by the tragedies of all those sub-postmasters. We all want it cleared up as quickly as possible, apart from some people who are given the job of doing it.
Well, certainly the implication that I read in the Sunday Times story today was that, yes, this had come from a civil servant, but it was the implication of the term limp into the general election, suggested to me that this had been a direction, or potentially a direction from government. Now, I'm not making that allegation myself, but that was how I read it. And so I think it is at least suggested that potentially this was government wanting to make the books look better or have more money to spend. Now, maybe I'm reading more into that than...
ministers came to the House of Commons to say the exact opposite, and I think you need very good evidence to say they were lying.
Okay, I'm going to interject at this point. I mean, the government have put out a very strong statement that they refute all the allegations in this piece. They're very much pushing back on this. Kemi Badenoch has also been tweeting saying that she completely pushes back on everything that Henry Staunton has said in this piece. So I think that's something that will be picked over this week in Parliament. No doubt questions will be raised.